Welcome back to the Radical Interview, Cats fans. In part 1, I sat down with television's Lance Falk to talk about his role as a writer for SWAT Cats, the Radical Squadron. Now, the creators of SWAT Cats, the Tremblay brothers, join Lance for the final part of the interview to discuss their days of working on the show together. They also give their ideas of what to expect for SWAT Cats Revolution. Once again, thanks for watching. Hey guys, this is Di from SWATcats.info, and with me today we have the co-creators of SWAT Cats, Yvonne and Christian Tremblay, as well as design coordinator and show writer Lance Falk. How will SWAT Cats Revolution be different from SWAT Cats the Radical Squadron?
What we have to understand is that the show was not conceived like we had an arc and we were going to know that the third episodes, and suddenly, they were going to use, it was not done like that. That being said, the new series, I think they would have more planning. We would probably sketch out on a big board and having more of an arc of things. It's okay to create questions because you don't necessarily want to have just be an open book for having solutions for everything than watching the show. I think it's okay also for viewers to have their own answers. We purposely put questions out there for viewers, but also we haven't explained anything, everything. And I think it's okay to leave it like that because it creates a sense of mystery a little bit.
What was the creative process like while working on the show?
We didn't want those guys to be just typewriters. We set up an environment, we set up the characters, and then within that, a lot of those characters and plot, the story and subplot had things probably from themselves that we're not aware, I'm sure. We're going back 23 years. So there's a lot of things to remember, but there's a lot of things when it was done on the spot.
Maybe Lance knows more about that.
I can echo that. We were given a lot of freedom. We were given some really useful, helpful, inspiring ideas from the brothers who give us drawings and concepts and things that were a lot of fun to look at, incorporate into the show. But I don't feel I was ever told what to write or how to write, for that matter. It was just good having all this creative input to kind of go into a stew that we made. A lot of times, a little intention under there, and a lot of times we were making it up as we went along and just having fun, trying to tell a really fun story.
And it's the best way to do the show when everybody collaborate. Designer, writer, and it's the best way to do it.
Because the key thing in doing a project like SWAT Cats or any other projects is that the creator behind it who came up with the idea, if it is too hands-on, it might strains on the writers or the designers or anybody else. The key for people like us is really to have a vision, like a common vision where we're going, so everybody understand. Creating a world, creating characters, creating kind of a sandbox for the guys to play with, and having them liberties to come up with. If it is outside that sandbox, we can bring them back in, but within there they can play. That was the cool part of it. The other episodes, which I love, which was not even our ideas, was the Ghost Pilot, and in the Ghost Pilot, I thought it was just a great idea. How do you kill a ghost? It's already dead. And all those aspects of it. So it was inspiring for us because then I did a bunch of designs and sketches. We would gather in our offices or Glenn's offices or Davis, and then we would just go and talk about it. And that's, to me, it's always the process where every single one of them can come up. Again, stress, the most important thing is that the guy had to have fun in there. When Lance was saying that Destructive Nature was his first script, what we had done at the beginning of the production, and I'm sure you remember, Lance, is that we did this meeting where everybody was there, and we kind of open up and say, listen, this is going to be your show as much as our show. So we want everybody to contribute. So what we did is we opened the door for opportunity, because sometimes people are a little bit intimidated. Oh, that's a creator, that's his thing. I don't want to infringe into the vision. We did totally the opposite. It was like open this big door, and we want your brain cells, we want your ideas, and will we accept all of them? No, but do we accept our own ideas? No. Right. So when you set up kind of a freedom in an environment like that, you kind of open up to come up to you without any kinds of restrictions.
There was no executive at the time, no broadcaster, only TBS, but not big deal. And yeah, we were doing the show like free.
The example I give always is that Lance came up into our office after that first script, and he came and I said, "Hey guys, I remember that scene. You know, I can animate that scene." He came, you know, and he say, "Hey guys, you know, I just want to say, you know, thank you, you know, to give me the chance to have my first screenwriter credits." And I said, "Listen, man, we only opened doors, and you came into that door with great ideas, and I'm a big fan to this day of his writing. You know, big imagination, and it's good, man."
Well, thank you.
What were your feelings on the final episode, and what are you most proud of?
When Greenbox turned on the SWAT Cats in that clip you just saw, it wasn't only a surprise to the audience, it was a surprise to the writer when I was writing it, that they needed another turn in the story to increase the peril, because they had everything under control at that moment, and they needed something to get them into even deeper.
Just when they came up with the idea, when Lance came up with the idea, that we just loved it. First of all, you know, it's a great title of an episode. Mixing, you know, bringing, you know, some villains together like that for their own common cause, but each one has their own things. It's just brilliant. The stuff was brilliantly animated also by Mook. We have a few animation cells of that big robot. Some that's pretty awesome. Love that, you know, mechanical thing inside of that, and it's just really cool. Great job, man.
Thank you. Well, there is a little story about that episode in that it was both Metallic Cats and both SWAT Cats inside the Renegade robot. Mm. And what Davis's suggestion was to have Mac captured and absorbed by the robot, so that Molly goes in as it's a rescue mission for her, not a thing to beat the robot. And so it was like a love story.
Yeah, it's better.
And I thought that was a wonderful
because it's
idea.
more character driven.
Yeah, a wonderful idea, and that's him. I had the characters fight a lot more in the beginning. I had Mac and Molly really fight, to contrast that she is willing to go into danger to save him, that she really loves him, even though they're at each other's throats at the beginning.
Yeah. Probably one of the things that I'm most proud of in the creation of SWAT Cats is the raw gallery of those recurring villains. It's funny because I look back at the very early development of SWAT Cats, when even the show was a little bit more cartoonish. Those villains are there: Taskmaster, Dr. Viper, Metallic Cats, Dark Cat. It's whenever I see them, it's like that's what drives us also to continue. It's one of the elements that drives us to continue, because besides Razor and T-Bone and their kind of double personality, which is very strong, it's one of the things, you know, that resonates with the fans, but also the villains are very strong. And that is one big driver for us to keep on doing bring back the series, because there's so much stories to tell with all of them, and also some new ones, new villains, because we're still, you know, basically when it was created, it's more than 25 years. So we're 25 years ahead, so there's new things in this world, you know, that was not back then. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest things for me, that the cool character, but also the cool villains. And you want to bring those guys back. You know, I think the writers, you had a blast, I think, and
oh yeah,
on those guys.
Well, my little rule, which I don't think I ever told you, was that I'd write one for me and one for you. So I would use one of your stock characters, and then I would create a villain. And so I did 6 episodes. 2 were Metallic Cats, 1 was Dr. Viper, and then I did Shard, Mutilor, and Turmoil. Mm. And Mutilor and Turmoil have the same letters in them, by the way, if you write it out.
Nice.
And I had equal fun doing both things, but I sort of I want to increase the mythology of the show that had already been established, but I also want to add to the mythology at the same time and have a balance.
And that's what I was thinking about, you know, earlier on, that, you know, when you allow that type of openness in the creativity, then guys like Lance and other guys can come up with those great things, and then suddenly your world expand, the world SWAT Cats expand, and it's great.
What obstacles did you face during production?
It almost brings me back to the questions of violence and things like that, which we got a little bit hammered on. It was a big question, when we were in productions, and when the broadcasters, including when the broadcasters, we were in the era when the show, where we're making the show, that Parents Against Violence, TV, this movement kind of started out, and then labeling lyrics on CDs, and Dee Snider's or Twisted Sisters goes on on Capitol Hills and all those kind of things. And then so the broadcasters stood up against, well, we're not going to do, we're not doing violence, it's not true, blah, blah, blah. But Ted Turner, kind of stood up against them and saying, we're not going to do violent show. Well, we were in the middle of productions, and choppers were being, smashed against, we didn't always see the parachute, coming out of with the guys. So I wouldn't say, it was necessarily violence. It was action. I think it was a concern. I think more on the executive side. It's still a cartoon show, it's still an animated series. I think we got away with a lot, but it was fun.
Are there certain villains in your rogues gallery that definitely need to make a comeback in SWAT Cats Revolution?
Love their personalities and their interaction and their love-hate thing. It's very rich, and it's very funny right away. Anyone can understand it. As for them coming back,
maybe they got a kids.
we talked about that. We talked about giving them Metalabrats. I think that was your idea. But let's just say, moving forward, for my part, I'm going to pitch Metallicat stories because I love those guys, and we'll see. And we'll see what happens.
No, for sure, Metallicats are, I would almost say, they are my favorite, because the idea of gangster, robotic gangster, so you have one era in time, which is the gangster area, and you have futuristic, robot. Even so more now today, because technology, is so much in our lives, more than it was, 25 years ago. They will be, and it's a must that they will be there. And how do we expand, the family, or just stick with them and the new relationship? I would almost say they are my favorite.
What is it about the show that drives you to bring them back? And do you have any plans for origin stories?
My son is 15, and I was showing him, things about, about SWAT Cats and some fans things. And he said, this week, he said to me, he says, it's amazing, that all of that, and you only had done, 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Only 2 seasons. We did this 23 episodes that aired on television, and all of that 23 years later, it's still there. So there's reasons for that. There's because, the things that we've created, all together, and the writings and all those kind of things that has been done on the show, there's richness, there's deepness into it. Otherwise, the show would have been gone. The reason it stays. So what I want to emphasize is that there's so much deep aspect of those characters, and it's one of the big reasons. We don't want to bring back SWAT Cats just because, let's just make SWAT Cats again. We want to make SWAT Cats because the characters, the villains, so much to tell about them. And bring also some questions, that has not been answered during the first 2 seasons, that we want to say, and then, this is where it gets really interesting for us, for the writers, but also for the fans,
Well, remember the Metallicats at one time were flesh and blood, and they were injured or fatally injured, and their personalities were put into robot bodies. So you could flash back and see what they look like, furry.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and that would be a fun
Yeah.
thing, fun beat in a story. Or they have flesh and blood relatives, right?
Because on the original Metallic Cats, as they were, like I mentioned, they were gangsters like Bonnie and Clyde. That was the inspiration. But the fact they were a robot, that was the cool aspect of it. So when you have characters that you can go and learn more from them and see where they're gonna go and act, it's all psychology. You want to get those in the head of those characters, and you want to continue. And then going back to your question, it refers back to secondary characters, that we never really answered like questions or sometimes motivations or what's behind, let's say, what was behind the screen, because we didn't have enough, to go deeper on those first 2 seasons.
Lance pitched the idea to have Jake and Chance work in the government salvage yard to acquire jet parts. So given that the F-14 Tomcat was retired years ago by the military in our world, is Revolution going to see a more modern TurboCat?
TurboCat is almost like a third SWAT Cat. Yes. So yes, and how it's going to look, how it's going to design, you have to stay true to the identity, all right? So whether it's Razor, T-Bone, Metallic Cat, Dr. Viper, Pastmaster, when they're going to come back, it can't be a gimmick. We're deeply, sincere into those characters. It has to be true to their identity. Now, in the same time, again, we're 25 years, later. So we want to add, we have more life experience. We have more, the world has, has evolved and changed. And we want to bring all those things to the show. But, TurboCat is not going to start to talk. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Who put the antifreeze in my carburetor? Yeah.
Because that's what that's about,
No series in the TurboCat.
What?
No series in the TurboCat.
The TurboCat TV series? A spin-off?
No, the series.
Series?
The series. Yeah.
Oh, no. What I'm saying is that, no talking, TurboCat. But, yeah, all the technology that we have now, and that's another very important point for us is that how we're going to use technology, not just technology that exists, like, Amazon, Alexa, and all those, Siri and all those things, but also graphically, how we will be able to use things that were not, was problematic, when we're doing the series. Now it's going to be, easy. Yeah. Because we're going to have the means to do that.
Well, you want it to be cutting edge.
Yeah.
And Razor wants the newest toys.
Yeah.
So full of apps in the plane, maybe.
Will we be given a closer look into Jake and Chance's personalities and their backgrounds?
For sure, Razor is more like, more the technical guy who would come up. T-Bone is more, just use the stuff. You might come up and we would need that. But Razor, definitively, we want to show that. It's again part of how we want to expand furthermore. How did they come up with those things, and how they actually build them and seeing, some blueprints and how they can use, different spare parts and just making it together. And also how they try to be, stealthy, because they still, it's just regular guys. It's immense, it's huge what we will be able to tap into. To me, one aspect also of the new series is really digging into Jake and Chance. I want to show more of, who they are. There's so much. We have a feature treatment, that has some aspect of additional background for them, which is really, really cool. What's interesting for me is it comes down to one thing. It comes down to characters. And Jake and Chance, Razor and T-Bone, there's so much I want to tell about them. Does Jake, has brother, his sister. What's his mom like? His father. T-Bone the same. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about that. Yeah.
That reminds me. You did mention that Chance's father was a pilot, right? and he went missing in action. Are we going to get a backstory about that?
There's some aspect, but there's also a new character as well that has been created. So that touch upon
Okay.
a little bit.
Was there a show Bible that the writers had to follow?
First of all, we did not have in the Bible like do's and don'ts. I don't recall.
Did we even have a Bible?
There was I think there was a document.
It's funny because I never read it.
It's there was a brief document, but for sure, there was no do's and don'ts. What was clear though is that the world was clear. It's an all cat world.
Right.
That was like the big rule. It's only cat. Don't bring humans in there. Don't bring anything else. If it's a robot or whatever it is, or ghost comes in, it's all cat. That was, kind of the framework. Personality-wise, I don't think there was any do's and don'ts, but it just came up. It came from personality. At one point, now T-Bone would not do that. It was not on a creator's point of view that no, you don't have him do that. It was just natural. No, he would not do that. We were talking recently I was talking with writers, and they were working on a project, and then they had to cut one character out, and then they say, well, we'll have his line read by the other character, and the writer is like, what? You can't do that. I cannot speak. The words of my mouth cannot be Lance, because right. Lance is not me, and I'm not him.
Right.
So when Razor is doing something, and you read something, then you say, no, Razor wouldn't do that.
Right.
And T-Bone would not do that. There are moments, there are moments sometimes where you ask yourself some questions, because you read things and says,
Maybe it's that one. Yeah.
would Razor do that?
Right.
Then you ask yourself, do you go deeper? You get deeper. And then you say, no, I wouldn't do that. And then, it's like you tell writers, nah, But it's fun, because this is where the fun is. You get into those characters because you give them life, you inject personality into them. At the end of the day, to answer the question, it was not really from any document. It was more like, no, I wouldn't do that. Yes, he would do that.
Did you ever encounter any meddling on an executive level? Was there a story that you really wanted to tell but were asked to go in a different direction?
The two paired stories, to me they're paired, is Turmoil and Mutilor, which again is why they have the same letters. My idea in the first place was that Turmoil was more of a half-hour story, Mutilor was more of a short story, and an executive, not these guys, not Davis, but an executive above us, flipped those on me, which I think worked to disadvantage of both stories. Mutilor could have been a real punchy, good little alien invasion thing and a fight and bump in and out. And I'm sorry, this is a little bit of a story. But my first Metallicats episode, I had a scene with Farrell. And my feelings about Farrell was that so far he'd been shown as a one-dimensional adversarial character. And what I wanted to do is show that under the right circumstances, he isn't a bad guy. He's just a guy with tremendous pressures of these vigilantes and his job and so forth. So I put him in a position where you saw that he had a line in the sand that he would not cross, that he had some moral character. And his line in the case of the story was he would not deal with scum. He was not going to get his heart's desire, the identity of the SWAT cats, if it meant dealing with bad guys.
Wait, Farrell, put that thing down and we'll tell you the secret identities of the SWAT cats.
Yeah, we found out who they are.
And so can you. Just let us go.
I don't deal with scum. Don't make a big deal about it. I just didn't want to owe those two hoods anything.
If it meant selling his soul. And he would not do that. And I think it didn't make him any less tough or less dangerous than the SWAT cats, but it showed you that he wasn't a one-dimensional bad guy who was a jerk. Spider-Man, if J. Jonah Jameson, you saw a side to him where he had journalistic integrity. And so I thought that was a really good, important beat. I wrote an entire story around that moment where I didn't even know what the story would be, but I wanted to show that aspect of Farrell, and I built out from there. So what I thought is, in a turmoil story, I would flip it on its head, and I would show that under the right circumstances, Farrell could actually be a villain, that he could go further, he could go bad. And all the beats with in the story as written, it was T-Bone who was being seduced by turmoil. Well, in my original idea, where it was a half hour, was that Farrell was really badly humiliated in the opening beat, and that turmoil recruited Farrell. Farrell's fired because of overextending himself to stop the SWAT cats. He's fired. He doesn't have a job. He's approached by turmoil saying, like, why don't you come with me? We can show those guys what's what. We can do this, we can do that. And she actually convinces him to go to the other side, to the dark side. And he really does. Because those circumstances sort of like he has nowhere to go back to. And so you see that under the right circumstances, he could be a villain. Now, what happens in the course of the story, the SWAT cats come in, they intervene, they turn the tables on the villain. Farrell sees this, knows it's not going to go his way, knows that when the villain goes down, he's going to go down. So what he does is he turns on turmoil and helps save the day. And then he says, that's what I was going to do all along. I was never going to be a bad guy. I was tricking her, I was lying to her, I was romancing her so that I could turn the tables on her. Now, he knows that's not true. The SWAT cat knows. SWAT cats know that it's not true. And he knows that the SWAT cats know it's not true. But he's in a situation where he actually became a villain for an episode. And so you can see he can go either way, and he's more complex, he's richer. Now, the last thing I have to say about that is when the story was truncated, and I was instructed to say, well, it's a show about Razor and T-Bone, so make the story about T-Bone. But the fact is, T-Bone, you never believe for 2 seconds that he's ever going to go bad. That's never going to happen. You know from the first word that he's lying to her, that he's just waiting to flip the tables. So to me, there was no suspense in the story because the character's arc and his morality are very clear as a hero, where Farrell, you don't know what he's going to do. And there's suspense because you don't know what's going to happen. And one thing I believe a writer's job is to keep the audience guessing and to surprise the audience without doing something they said, well, that could never happen. So that's, I'm sorry I kind of took over, but that's sort of the story of that episode. And I still would like to tell that story of Farrell under the right circumstances, showing that he can go dark.
That's what I'm saying with what Lance just mentioned. All those tiny little elements here and there within the global aspect of the show that has sustained through all these years is because they are rich. There's richness in the characters. There's something deep about them that is, they're just not one surface. There's something intricacies, complexities, and that's what you are attracted to. And coming on the new things, it's to really explore deeper all of those aspects. And to me, that will be the most fun. Besides, obviously, the helicopter crashing again and all that stuff.
Right.
Well, I don't want to bring back those giant mummies. Yeah. They were awesome.
Well, as an addendum to that story, of course, we had Gary Owens. We had the great Gary Owens as Farrell, the late great Gary Owens. And so there's a lot of pleasure in writing rich material for him to play as an actor because he's really capable of doing things.
The Farrell with the metallic cats, it's also probably one of my very, very good moments in the series when he's like, I mean, he can at that moment know the identity of the SWAT cats. And then I don't deal with scums. Bang. It's brilliant. It's like, very, very, very personality oriented and good stuff.
Thanks. I'm proud of that one.
That's a good one.
I like that moment. So
I'll tap on your shoulder for you. want to have one question answered.
I've got several of them.
No, but if you had to have one, say, this thing bugs me forever. Now the guys are here.
I want to know the very first mission the SWAT Cats were on, when it first became SWAT Cats, when it first built the jet and took off for the first time.
In the new series, yes. There are things about them that I want to see on screen. It doesn't mean that we reveal everything. But in 2 seasons like this, we got snippets.
Right.
Now we want to take those snippets and expand upon them.
How does our deputy mayor get a signaler to call them?
Yeah.
Like, what's that story? Because
Yeah.
they're vigilantes and she's an officer.
Yeah.
And they give her, like, here's how you contact the outlaws. It's interesting.
There's that.
There is a story there.
Exactly. And I also want to go a little bit deeper, on how Jake met Chance. They met over there, but
Definitely.
and me, I want to get into their family, man. It's like I want to know. I want to show a few things in there. It's a little bit like you see those. It's a bad example, but when you see like rock stars, whatever it is, and then sometimes you see their parents. It's weird, because you feel that those guys, they don't have parents. They can't have parents, Keith Richards, what, he has a mom. Yeah, he does. The fact that it's always interesting. It's always, to me, it's always, fascinating. We haven't gone there yet, but some aspect I want to go there.
Well, guys, thank you so much for answering our questions on the few episodes that we had, and we look forward to hearing some more about Revolution in the live stream.
Thank you. You're most welcome.
Digital attendees around the world, please give your online applause to SWAT Cats co-creators Christian and Yvonne Tremblay, joined by SWAT Cats writer and design coordinator, the one and only Lance Fall.
You do with the big banner, remember the big banner? But there was
No, one got stolen. The SWAT Cats was stolen.
Yeah, but so somebody had it.
Somewhere.
Somebody climbed up there and got it.
Yeah,
somebody
but
it got
imagine
stolen.
there's somebody that
There was
got
a big,
the big banner. Oh, they were pretty
Do you know
big.
the one I'm talking about?
No.
Okay, let me show you.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see this.
So somebody has the banner, or maybe gets destroyed. But
And what do they do with it? That's covered over there.
but if somebody got it, I'm really surprised that it never come up. Maybe the guy, I don't know.
Crazy.